Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Podcana episode 39. This week, we will be starting the Set 3 Podcana spoiler review. I felt like we had a pretty good track record in Set 2. Despite some of the early feedback we got, I was actually thinking, guys, for a while, I was like, is there anything we got really wrong? And there's one that I definitely got wrong in Set 2, and that was the book, the spell book. I didn't say it was bad necessarily, but I did say I thought that it wouldn't fit into the Ruby Amethyst list because of the other items, and the complete opposite happened. The other items came out, the spellbook came in as the only item. So that was one I definitely got wrong. I think I was a little high on Sisu as well. But yeah, we did a bit of spoilers last week, but we're really cranking into them this week. The set comes out soon. It's very exciting. I think that some people are a little... this meta might be stale, so it's about to see a shake-up. And I'm excited. Will Ruby Amethyst be on top once again in Set 3? Man, I hope so. Maybe. How's y'all's weeks been so far?
Good, yeah. Just been enjoying all of the spoilers being teased. We probably won't cover them this episode, but like majority of the Enchanteds got... spoiled, and let me just tell you, I think they're really, really cool. Art is always a personal preference, but they've really gone for a unique style with these Enchanteds. But the good news is I do think that there's more Enchanteds coming out in this set. Is that good news? Yes, because they're cooler cards, but does that mean they're going to be rarer or not? I guess we'll wait and see. But yeah, overall, I'm that person that you said, Brennan. I'm the person that's ready for a meta shakeup because I'm a little tired of what we have right now. Even though it was good, I will say Set 2 meta was still really, really good. It wasn't just the same thing the whole time. The start was really cool. We got some experiments. We moved into kind of where we left off in Set 1. But nevertheless, it's been fun. What about yourself, Moyen?
I have the same approach as last set, where I try to dodge all the spoilers. So I have the first reaction on this podcast. So I'm looking forward to the podcast every week because I want to see the new cards.
Yeah. I don't think people know this about Moyen, but as soon as the set releases on Pixelborn, Moyen goes into this like hibernation state where he just starts cooking some decks. I'm excited for that. I'm excited to see these deck lists start rolling into the group chat. Anyway, let's head into the headlines. Not too much this week because we're really going to try to get into spoilers ASAP. First thing I want to hit on is... Thea hosted another tournament. It was a bit controversial because it said no Ruby Amethyst decks. It was canceled because of some outlash, whatever the word would be. People gave some feedback that they didn't want that. And it was canceled and it was sort of re-put up, but with a different prize pool. So they readjusted it. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how I feel about this. I think that overall, if there's a grassroots community tournament, it should be able to run under any rules that it wants to. I don't necessarily, like, if there was a legitimate organized play tournament, legitimate competitive tournament hosted by Ravensburger, and they were like, no Ruby Amethyst decks. Yeah, that would be cringe. And they wouldn't do that. That's just not how organized play works. That would be like MetaZoo levels of just weirdness. But if it's a community grassroots tournament, I think they should be able to do whatever they want. Honestly, I was kind of excited for this. We were talking to the group chat. We're like, okay, so is Ruby Sapphire just the default best deck in this case? Like, it got some juices flowing, especially at the end of a meta when it's stale. I think that... I didn't really see any of the negative feedback or the outlash, but what I will say is that if you were a part of that group, you should be careful because these people that are putting on these tournaments for everybody and making it so these experiences are possible, those people are not guaranteed, right? They're doing this in their own free time. They're raising their own money and they're putting up a play experience for all of us to enjoy the game. Like, those people are doing us a favor. So I don't know. If you were one of the people being overly negative about it, it's much different than giving feedback. I would encourage you from not doing that in the future because like these tournaments are important for the competitive scene. And yeah, even if you disagree with the rule set, I think it's like, just don't play them.
and let me tell you as well that, let me just cut in really quickly. Let me tell you that any people that think that Tia is making money from this, she is most definitely not making money for this. And that's the toughest thing as someone who's organized grassroots tournaments and stuff. When people start saying that, like, especially if people are like, oh, you're taking all the money for this, that feels really, really like tough because you're putting your heart and soul into making this happen. Like, it is really, really hard to make these events run efficiently. And when people start slating you like that, it's like, it actually makes you want to give up. So exactly what Brendan said, please don't do that. Like, we are very fortunate to have great events like this, especially in a space where there's no official online client, but yet we can still play high-level events online. So Yeah, just don't be that person.
Why? This has happened before. This happens all the times in card games, especially before OP comes out, grassroots, and there's why is there a problem? Like, what? I know the back end as well, or I know sort of the inner details that she is not making money. But what if she was?
Yeah.
Like, she's the one that's going out, organizing the tournaments, dealing with the headache of running the tournament, getting TOs, sometimes getting the prize pool, shipping out enchanteds, and there's like so much of her personal time that goes into that, as well as the passion aspect. It's like, what if they were making money?
Mm-hmm.
It's like people always
weird.
Yeah, people always first are like, nobody can make it. It's just nobody can make any money. It's just crazy to me. I mean, I'm not talking about a ridiculous profit margin, but if someone is making a little bit of, it's just weird to me.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. It's basically, I think people sometimes feel like they're owed to have all the money that they put in into the prize pool also being paid out. And I don't think they're being owed that, but I think at least the tournament needs to be very clear about how much of the payment always goes into the prize pool and how much, like what percentage goes in. Because if they're not being clear about that, I think that's a little shady. But that's not what's happening here at all. Me personally, I wasn't like the biggest fan of just banning Ruby Amethyst, but like I still wanted to play the tournament, and I was still cooking up some decks. So I was sad that it didn't take place just because some people like didn't agree with it or like we're giving some backlash.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, all we can really say about it is just I wouldn't recommend doing that. We would definitely frown upon it, and just be careful, because the people that are putting on grassroots tournaments, like, they're doing it out of passion. Like, it is not guaranteed, and you don't want to disincentivize that. It's just
the only thing that I would criticize is I think the tournament was supposed to be named "Do Not Be Prepared," but it didn't mean that Be Prepared wasn't allowed in the tournament. So I think there would have been some confusion there. I also saw in the comments some people just immediately asking, is Amethyst not allowed? Is there just this card not allowed? But it was just about the Ruby Amethyst combination. So just the title was a little problematic. But also, maybe I can find it. I got the promo card from topping Dia's first event recently in the mail.
Oh, nice. Yeah. While he does that, there's one other thing that happened. I don't know if you're going to grab one, but there's one other thing that happened. So there was this tweet that I saw. It's not going to be all negative news, but it was just really obnoxious. All I can say is just don't be this person. Basically, this person writes this tweet and they go, "This is how I envision the conversation going during Lorcana Dev. Hey, do you know that magic card Wheel of Fortune? The one that got restricted for 30 years? Let's print that card. Oh, and make it free. What's the worst that can happen?" And then they retweeted themselves and they go, "I repeat, what's the worst that could happen?" Like, it's just, I feel like this person felt like they had the first clever thought, and then they decided to be an asshole about it. It's just like this card in Lorcana. First of all, it's actually balanced. Second of all, the devs knew what they were doing. Obviously. Yep. Like, the devs obviously know what Wheel of Fortune is. It's just such an ignorant take, and it's just like, don't be that person. It's like, it's so toxic, and I don't know why this is like promoted. I saw it retweeted a few times as well, but it is not that clever. The devs knew what Wheel of Fortune was, etc. Also, card games are not supposed to be card games are not all about balance. Card games are about fun. Like, card game development should take some risks on some cards, period. And if that means that a card has to get banned every now and then, good. Because if it didn't, the game would be boring.
So it's like, I think it's very important for players of a game to give feedback on why they like or don't like game design decisions, right? That's important. But the problem is, it happens so fast that suddenly the player thinks that they would have studied like game design for 20 years, or I don't know. So suddenly they think, oh, clearly this was a mistake, and they should have done this and this. And
I'm a better designer than these people who are experienced. Yeah,
I think
it's crazy.
Giving feedback's important, but that doesn't suddenly mean you're a game designer or you know everything better than the design team. I think it happens in every game, and I really don't like to see it.
You brought this card and this tweet up, Brendan, because we might not get to it in this episode, but there's a card that's going to combo with A Whole New World that people are already saying, "Oh my god, are they? Oh, how did they print this card? It's crazy." But
you know what other card combos with A Whole New World? Prince John, right?
Yep.
Prince John, it was like, oh my god, it was going to be so busted. And guess what? The discard deck doesn't run a whole new world, or for the most part. It's just like, yeah, I don't know. Sometimes people like they think they're being clever, and it's just like, okay, this is like the most level 0 tweet I've ever read in my life. Obviously, the development team knew what Wheel of Fortune was, and obviously, by the way, this card has been balanced for 2 sets already. It's not even, ridiculous. Anyway, spilled ink section. I'll pass over you to Kawa.
Right, so first comment is from Abadade. He says, I've listened to every episode at work twice now and really enjoy the content. I finally went to a local sealed play tourney and felt like you guys were in my head while picking which cards in the deck to play. I didn't win the whole thing, but advanced a bit and lost 2-1 against the guy that got first place. Loving the dynamic you guys are developing too. Can't wait for more spoiler banter. That's awesome to hear.
Spoiler banter. Yeah. We had some spoiler banter this morning. Kawa was like, "Hey, you guys have to agree with me this time. You can't be dunking on me." I said,
"I'm ready for it."
I told Kawa he's come a long way. When we first took him in, he was a 0 to hero believer.
All right. Next comment is from John. The discussion on bosses on a roll raised an interesting question in my mind. Would a card that says gain 1 lore be playable, even as an inkable 1 cost? I'm not sure it is worth it to pay 1 card for 1 lore. Would it have to be a 1 cost inkable song? Would that even be playable? Spellbook gets you 1 lore for 1 ink, but you have to amortize the cost of the book itself into that 3 uninkable. So you could frequently end up paying more like 1.5 to 2 ink plus a fraction of a card for each ink. I do think the concept of tacking 1 lore onto a lower value action is interesting in general, though, even if this example isn't great. So this is leading on from the card that we discussed last week, which is the 3 cost. I can't remember if it's inkable or uninkable, but you basically inkable. You rearrange the top 5 cards of your deck, and you gain a lore essentially. Yeah. So I mean, that
I
checks
love
out
this
to
question.
me.
I think that's a very interesting question. How much exactly how would you have to design a card that just says gain a lore? Because I think at 1 cost, it is already pretty close to like a decent card. But it just depends on context, right? Let's say if you combine that card with like Whole New World or a deck that can somehow draw a lot, I think 1 cost gain a lore can provide huge tempo, or not tempo things, huge reach in the final turns of a game.
It's effectively
when suddenly maybe you had like if you combine that with Amethyst, then they already have like gold bounce, and in the same turn they can play a few 1 cost gain a lore. Suddenly, I don't know, you could die when they are at 15 lore or something.
Mm-hmm.
So I think at 1 cost it's already would find applications in the right deck for it.
So I think that this question, it asks a deeper question, which is like, what is the value of a card in Lorcana? And I do think that I value individual cards as more than 1 lore. Like if we were gonna draw a paradigm to Magic the Gathering, like there are cards, your opponent starts at 20 life, so it's not lore, you don't go up, the opponent starts at 20 life and they go down. I mean, there are cards that reduce their life directly. The game is not the same, it's not balanced the same, but some of those burn spells, they're good in decks that are focused on that and can take advantage of that kind of card. But usually you wouldn't just throw a burn spell into like any random deck, right? Which is how I think that this kind of card would go. Is like if you had a card that did nothing but exchange itself for lore, I think it would have to be in a very specific deck. Ultimately, my first gut feeling is that a card that all it did was gain 1 lore and made you lose 1 ink, which is what the card we talked about would do, I don't think would be playable, because I do value board presence a bit more, like the actual permanence on the board. And almost every card in the game can quest for 1 lore, so they effectively have that. So I don't think it'd be playable. My biggest question is, if there was a card that cost 0 and was inkable and could gain a lore, would you play it? I mean, that's asking the true question of, is a singular card in your deck worth 1 lore, or is it worth more?
It's only in the right deck. In some aggro, very aggressive decks it can work, and also in some decks that draw a lot it can work. And then that can stall and then get to like 15-ish lore. I think in those decks it can work, but in most decks I agree that wouldn't be very good.
Mm-hmm. Do you think so like if we did extrapolate it to a card that costs 0 and was inkable and just only said gain 1 lore, let's say it's a song as well, Like, how playable do you think that card is only fringe playable in these kind of decks that take
Yeah,
advantage?
I still don't think it's like an auto-clute in any deck. I think there's still a lot of decks that wouldn't want to play that type of card. But the card would still be good in the other decks.
If that card that we're describing, which is 0 cost, inkable, gain a lore, if that card was, because I'm just, for some reason in my head, I'm like, oh, this is kind of sounding like a coin to me in Hearthstone. If that was given to the player who goes second, would that be, how would you guys feel about that?
So I think
good, bad?
I think that card is actually way worse than the coin. So the coin allows you to virtually accelerate an entire turn.
Mhm.
So like cards are very finely balanced on what turn they come down. Like that's the idea. That's why ramp is so powerful. Ramp is, I mean, obviously being if you're on 10 ink and your opponent's on 8 ink and you can double spell and your opponent can't, that's powerful. But what's really powerful is, let's say you're on turn 4 and you play a 6-drop. Like that 6 drops are not meant to be played on turn 4, because as you rotate to your opponent's turn, the answers that they have are either 4 drops or opposing 4 drops because you played on turn 4, or 5 drops. And the 4-drop and 5-drop slot is not necessarily intentionally designed to deal with something like a 6-drop. So that's where you get to this asymmetry and you have cards that literally can't be dealt with. It's I think that the coin is much more powerful because it does allow you to get into those sort of asymmetric resource values on cards where, the game is just not designed around you having something out that quickly. But I mean, obviously, in the case of the coin, you're getting it when you're on the draw, so you're not actually getting a massive advantage. But yeah, 1 lore, in my opinion, is not equal to a card that you would be given for free that you could cash in for 1 resource and accelerate yourself by an entire turn.
But still, it would at least go a step in balancing out the going first advantage.
Mm-hmm. I think my hot take here is that if the card did exist that was 0 cost, inkable, and it just said gain a lore and was a song, I do think that card would be currently unplayable in, I think every single deck. Because if I look at like all the cards in Lorcana, like even basic 1-drops, I do consider them to be more impactful than a single lore, even though they're more susceptible than a card like this because they can be prepared. Let's think about it like a Lilo or something like that. It can be prepared. It can be fire the cannon. Like it can be removed where this card couldn't. Mm-hmm. I think that those cards are inherently more powerful because they exist on the board. They technically can engage in combat and they have a persistent value where if your opponent doesn't deal with it, you can cash in multiple lore over multiple turns.
The reason why I would disagree with that is that, so we talk a lot about floor and ceiling of a card, and I think most of the time the 0 cost gain a lore card would be pretty bad. I think because it's inkable, it's somewhat okay, because in the spots where that card would be good, like no other card would do the same thing. It's like it's a card that can come in very clutch while being inkable. So I think inkable cards that are situationally very strong and other times not that strong are still very good cards.
It's really interesting because the idea of inkable and uninkable cards is the axis of Lorcana that we can't really look back at other games like Magic or any other TCGs and draw a paradigm from like, oh, this card existed in that game and it was powerful because of this. The inkable uninkable dynamic is like a whole nother thing. It's like a new frontier in Lorcana where we have to try to evaluate cards and their power level on it. It does make it pretty challenging. Yeah, last thing I'll say is my idea for that, I would play that card in a deck, maybe a whole new world deck, but also maybe a deck, if it did exist sometime in the future, where potentially some sort of combo deck where I could draw in disgusting amount of cards, or I could draw my entire deck, right? I have to play a bunch of bad cards in my deck to do this crazy combo and draw my entire deck. And then effectively I just play out all these gain of lore, win the game, something like that. So we were trying to keep this section short, but it was a good question. Yeah.
Now I'm wondering, do we ever get like very expensive burn cards? Like, I don't know, 10 ink gain 5 lore? Do we ever get something like that?
I think it would be it would potentially be, it's hard because those things definitely exist in Magic to an extent. I do think those cards would be very unrewarding to play against because they're extremely uninteractable, right? Basically, the only paradigm you're facing as an opponent to that is like, I can't let my opponent get to 10 lore, or I have to tempo them out so they can't get 10 lore before they cast their gain the 10 lore card. I don't know if those are fun design, so maybe that's why.
Because this type of design exists in like basically every traditional TCG, where there's some type of burn cards that also play later, right?
Yeah, but usually in the other TCGs, the burn decks, and sorry for using terms that are not Lorcana, but this would be these kind of like the game lore cards in Lorcana. Usually the burn players will opt for the lower cost cards that are better rate than the higher cost cards. So let's say it's 10 ink, gain 10 lore, but there's 1 ink, gain 2 lore. It's double the rate. So, I mean, they would just play a bunch of the 1 ink ones, right? Rather than the gain 10 lore. Like, the gain 10 lore explosive is maybe less interactable. It's more of a surprise, etc. But usually the lower cost ones have a better rate. So I think that's, yeah.
Yeah, for example, in Hearthstone, there was like Fireball, 4 cost, deal 6, but then the 10 cost is only 10 cost, deal 10. So it's always lower rate, but at least it's more damage on 1 card. So you need to play less of these mostly bad cards that are only sometimes good.
Yeah, I don't know if we have a card, and we could have a card like this in Lorcana already. I've no idea, but like thinking of like the 0 cost inkable gain a lore, if you have another card, just when you mentioned kind of combo decks and stuff like that, Brennan, if you had a card that just said after you cast an action, ready this card. But I think that text on the card in general, I think would just be very powerful anyways, because if it just readies it and it doesn't say, ready, it can't quest. That I think you could always find a crazy combo thing with that, even just with 1 cost cards eventually, right? So yeah, definitely interesting. All right, next comment is from Quest for Lore. I love this podcast, listen every week. I know none of you are into the Pokemon TCG community, but I honestly believe they have the best competitive TCG experience going right now. There are tournaments ranging from smaller local level to challenges and cups which are slightly bigger, and even regionals, nationals, and worlds. The game has cash pricing that was recently almost doubled, and participation is huge. They are getting 1.5 to 2k players every regional. This is all amazing, but the best part is that competitive decks range from $50 to $150 for top tier decks. The deck that won Worlds last year was $60. That's great. That's really, really cool to hear. I know this is a long comment, but I truly think that Pokemon TCG is doing something right because they are growing like crazy. Not to mention their broadcast quality is actually insane and the best I've ever seen anywhere recently. True, yeah. Hope you all have a great week and can't wait to tune in next week. That's really good to hear, and I think the biggest thing I want to take away from that is, if their broadcast quality is good, I think I tuned into one of their streams at some stage, and it looked like super clean.
Yeah, especially the Japanese One Piece as well. Incredible production.
Oh, I watched the video of that as well. Yeah, that looked insane.
It's insane. Yeah, it's nuts. I do think that Magic the Gathering's Pro Tour coverage these days, and they canceled their Pro Tours for a while and then they came back. Their current coverage is also pretty ridiculous. Like it's incredible. Also, there's literally there's almost no breaks. It's just they just run it through like the entire time. It's crazy. But yeah, I've heard good things about Pokemon. To be honest, and like all the stats, all the stats here you have are really, really good. So yeah, I don't doubt it.
Money in Pokemon as well.
That's what I don't know. That's why for me, when I look at like who's really trailblazing for competitive TCGs right now, I look at Flesh and Blood because they put up $1.5 million and they're only increasing it. And yeah, that's very, and they have the competitive circuit has a high level of competitive integrity. Like there's a very clear ladder in which to ascend and attend the high level tournaments and sort of become the highest level of champion you can. It's not very convoluted. It's very straightforward. Like if you put in the work and you perform well, you can absolutely become that.
Pokemon Worlds first place is 50,000.
Okay, I mean that's not bad. I mean, Flesh and Blood is, I think it's over 100,000. We can look at Barcelona if you want to pull that up. Flesh and Blood Barcelona 2023 first place. I think it's a little bit.
I assume it's more than Pokemon.
Yeah.
Right.
And Flesh and Blood, if you get first, you also get a promo card that is, it's kind of one of one, not necessarily one of one, but it does say like Pro Tour on it, and then the hero can rotate out of the format. Nobody's ever gotten 2, so those also sell for like $30,000+. So, yeah.
So that nearly on top of whatever prize money.
Yeah. So first place 100,000 in Flesh and Blood, which is it's not all about money. Like Flesh and Blood, the buy-in price for decks is probably over $300, can be up to $600. Like it's expensive. One thing that is, I guess, slightly an upside is a lot of those pieces that are expensive in the deck are equipment that are transferable across multiple decks. So I guess that's one upside is once you buy it, you kind of don't need to buy it many, many times with different heroes. But Flesh and Blood is much, much, much more expensive than Pokemon. And yeah, I've heard good things about that TCG. It's crazy that a TCG that's been around for that long is still innovating and still trying to compete. Because usually they get complacent and they just kind of, I don't know,
they fade out.
Get worse. Yeah, they fade. Yeah, like all Bandai games.
All right, next comment is from Madlink. Boss is on a roll, is not good like God tier, but I've seen tons of crappy cards, vanilla and not vanilla, all Lorcana. This one at least has interesting effects. Keep up the good stuff. Edit Legendary Mickey seems like a fun card too. I imagine it does move to the Fang location and it gains evasion reward if they don't have non-tiger removal, aka the Dream. Yeah, that's kind of what we talked about, is that Mickey, the 4-cost Inkable 0/1. If you can move it to the Fang location, it could be insane. But you need to also realize, I'm going to pull up this location super, super quickly. You need to realize that you would need to combo that Mickey with an effect pretty much that says move it to this location for free. Like if you had a card on the board that, you know, when it quests, move a card to location for free. Or you have to then just have 6 ink because it costs 4 to play the Mickey and then 2 to move Mickey to Fang. So suddenly it's not a 4 cost that has this crazy thing. It's actually a 6 cost. So still be pretty good. I mean, I do think that's one clear way to try and make the card work, but it's you know, it's a lot of work. And then also if your opponent just plays something like a Tinkerbell or something like that, you'll just cry. Like you'll be so sad.
I mean, that card is the thing is like that card design wise is really powerful. I think it's more expensive than the MTG counterpart. The MTG counterpart was a really good card. I think it's more expensive, but currently in Lorcana, our big drops, like our high end curve, doesn't impact the board in a ultra relevant way. Like I think one of the most powerful ones is Maleficent Dragon, and still like I feel like that would be underwhelming to cheat out on turn 6. For putting this other bad card. Because the Mickey by itself, like if you never activate the ability, it's a terrible card, right? The whole idea is you activate the ability. My counterpoint is that cheating out Maleficent one time on turn 6 is maybe not powerful enough to have the other bad card in your deck. Nevertheless, that like looking forward as more sets come out, more cards enter the card pool, this is absolutely a tool you should keep coming back to. Like this is a card that could totally be powerful.
I will say, just wait for one card that I've seen already revealed. Okay. It's pretty big. I don't know. I honestly don't think you combo with Mickey, but I'll say it's a big card with a very big effect. Mm-hmm. Okay, and our last comment is from Rock. You need the aggro decks to keep certain decks in check. There will be control decks that are better than other control decks, and the only way to beat them is to outrace them. You don't want to keep going to every time. You don't want to keep going to time every single round either. 2 control decks, 10 rounds for 12 hours going to time. Losing to time does not feel good either. I will say it was a little bit like this in set 1 for the Ruby Amethyst mirror matches. Like we talked about this so many times, you know, if you win game 1,
on the wrong list. That's why.
Yeah, Brendan and Moyen out here were never going to ties. They were just winning the games.
Well, we never lost, so even if we went to time, it was good for us. Like, I don't know.
And then he just adds a final point. Gotta accept the fact that aggro has to exist, build around it, but can't expect a realistic world where there are only control decks. Of course, it's rewarding as a player to win as a control deck because of the high level thinking and lines of play, but aggro needs to exist to counter the control. Yeah, this is just leading on from everything we said last week. I think it's completely fair. I think all the points that Brendan said about why playing control is more fun for him makes complete sense. I also just think, and like as someone who's been playing a lot of aggro this set, just aggro, your matchup spread is harder, but you can be rewarded if you know what the meta is. That's the takeaway I've taken from aggro right now, is that especially in a game like Lorcana, right? You're really risking if you run into one specific ink color, not even one type, not even one deck, one ink color, which could have multiple combinations of stuff, then you will feel that it's really, really tough. So for me, when I want to play aggro, and when I have played aggro in the past now, is I choose it when I think it's appropriate to play it in a meta that people aren't really expecting it, and not really in a meta that people can't counter, because I feel like aggro can always be countered. So far in Lorcana, we haven't seen the most broken aggro deck that literally nothing can stop it. Like if you tech your deck to beat aggro, you can beat aggro, right? So that's my final takeaway from it, is if you think that it's appropriate to bring it when many people aren't expecting it, that's the best thing to do. But you'll always have an inherent risk, whereas playing control decks, you will probably just have more consistency across the board.
Yeah. I think also last week we agreed, everyone agreed that aggro has to exist. Yeah. It's just we wished it was a little more interesting than it currently is in Lorcana, right?
That's why I picked out this comment, was I just wanted to re-clarify that we agree with you. Yeah, like we completely agree with you. I don't think we've ever even had like a dissenting thought from that. It's like we absolutely think aggro should exist. So I just want to re-clarify that, yeah, we don't think aggro should not exist by any means. Our conversation, we were more trying to point out to like like Moyen said, like aggro is a bit uninteresting in Lorcana specifically because it is very uninteractive with the opponent and doesn't make... We would prefer decks that had more decisions to make, whether to quest or to interact on board or something like that.
Sure. And then moving on from Spilled Ink, but this is actually an email that we got. So this is from Guy Rooney. He says, "Hey guys, love the podcast. Have a question for the mailbag. I'm based in Australia and I've recently came across some info stating that we won't be receiving Lorcana until early 2025. By this point, we will be at the very least 7 sets deep. What does this mean for the earlier sets / meta and competitive side of Lorcana in Australia and other countries that aren't getting Lorcana until much later? I don't imagine we'll be getting all 7 sets released at once in Australia. So do you think they'll release something akin to the Fab History Pack so we can obtain staples from older sets? Or will we just be screwed? Regardless, enjoying Pixelborn for now, and it looks like how I'll be enjoying Lorcana for the foreseeable future. Thanks, guys. Keep up the great work." I want to point out, take 2 things from this. Just speaking about the last comment there, another great reason. Like this is proof why Pixelborn is amazing for people like this who can't access the game. They can still play the game online and still experience how amazing it is. And then the second point is, it's really interesting for how they're gonna do it in terms of they're not gonna release set 1 for Australia next year when they get it, right? So this is a point I want to pass on to Brendan, because you have experience with this, also mentioning Fab History Packs. How do you think it would be best for them to do? And also, is this common for multiple TCGs or even new TCGs that they don't release in I would say certain regions, right?
Yeah, my first experience with this is Flesh and Blood. So I'll just answer, what is Fab History Pack? So Fab had, let's say, set 1, 2, 3, and 4. They released in New Zealand, Australia, North America. And then, they expand to more regions later in the set. So they expand into more regions in Europe. They expand into more regions in Asia. And now those regions need these sets, but these sets are potentially out of print. So they reprinted staples in white border, which I know some people are going to disagree with, white border versus black border for cards, but in white border for those regions specifically, and did some localization in regards to languages. They still had English as well, but some localization in regard to languages. So they printed in German, Italian, things like that. And they did take staples, like constructed staples from the old sets, and they put them in those packs. So those packs are mostly opening constructed staples and things like that. So yeah, I mean, you have to think about it like, if Australia missed out on 7 sets and the first set that comes to their local game store is set 8, well, then they just have to buy all these staples that are potentially out of... I don't know how the printing will work with set 1, 2, 3, like when they're going to stop printing them. They'll always print to demand. I don't think they will always print to demand. That's just not a thing. But yeah, how are these people going to get those cards? So that's what the Fab History Pack thing could be. But ultimately, what is best? I just don't know. Fab is my first experience with it. History Packs had positives and negatives. And yeah, I think that honestly, the biggest thing for me is Ravensburger kind of dropped the ball I feel like Ravensburger was so prepared. They had so many sets done in advance. I'm surprised that they didn't release in Australia and New Zealand. I know it's a smaller market, this late, like early 2025. So hopefully, I don't know what the solution will be, but hopefully they do have one in mind to help you all get caught up. But I'm sure that if you live in Australia right now, you can buy cards. It's just like they're not available at the local level. So you have to be buying from Europe or something like that, pay the shipping, etc. You should be buying singles anyway. By the way, if you play constructed card games, buy singles. It's much more economic.
100%. All right. Let's jump straight into the spoiler section now, because I'm very eager to get through as many of these as possible. We'll be probably splitting it between this episode and the next episode. Hopefully we can get through all of the spoilers. Next episode might just be literally pure spoilers. So let's jump into it. So we're going to start off pretty early on from when spoilers were kind of happening. So I've seen pretty much all the location cards now, but I don't think Brendan or Moyen have seen them. So we're going to start off with Jim Hawkins, Space Traveler, 5-cost inkable, 4/4, quest for 2, legendary. With an effect, this is it. When you play this character, you may play a location with cost 4 or less for free. And also take the helm. Whenever you play a location, this character may move there for free. So first impressions.
Strong. I mean, it's a potential 9 resource value, play for 5. Like, I mean, these are...
No, but it's not 5 resource. Because a 4/4 that quest for 2 isn't really a 5, is it?
True.
It's more like, maybe it's a 4 and a 4. Which is still very good. It's just, I don't want to call it a 5 and a 4.
Yeah.
I'd say it's probably still I wouldn't call it this is the thing, right? I'd call it a 4 uninkable maybe, right? I don't think I'd call it a 4, because other cards like Beast, right? The Beast that just destroys an item when it comes into play and stuff like that. I think, well, yeah, it's interesting, right? Because the vanilla stat that we've seen for this is a 5-cost inkable 5/5 that quests for 2.
Or 5.
That's why when we're
oh wait, Cerebus only quests for 1.
quest for
Of the
1,
new
yeah.
one.
So 5/5 is like Winnie the Pooh, right? The sorcerer Winnie the Pooh that just quests for 2. So
Yeah, so I think it's very fair to say 4/4 quest for 2 is like more along the lines of a 4-drop.
sure.
But still, that's cheating resources. Cheating resources is good. I think, without having seen all the locations, I would already rate this card highly without Take the Helm. But Take the Helm even adds on top of it, that part of the effect. So I'm impressed with this card.
I think we'll be seeing a lot of this card. Honestly, I think it's just very powerful. You're cheating a lot of resources, and with all of the locations being introduced in this set, I think we'll see a lot of Jim Hawkins.
Well, I mean, I agree with you all, but if locations are
the only reason we don't see Jim Hawkins is if all of the locations are bad.
Yeah, if all locations suck, then yeah, probably not. But it's a powerful card in theory.
Sure. All right, next card is Pongo, 3-cost inkable 3/2 Determined Father. Quests for 1 is also super rare. With Twilight Bark, once per turn, you may pay 2 ink to reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a character card, put it into your hand. Otherwise, put it at the bottom of your deck.
I just want to clarify for audio listeners, this is an Amber card.
Yes, sorry, apologies.
All good. Yeah, so I mean, it seems pretty powerful. To be honest, I could see you running this in a deck that only runs characters. So you have 2-cost draw card, just as an activated ability on a 3-cost. That's really powerful. I don't know if decks that are composed of all characters are powerful. That's the deck building constraint. That's the push and pull here. But ultimately, that is a very good ability, in my opinion.
Yeah. Honestly, I would have assumed that this card would say, rest this card and pay 2. But that you don't have to do that makes it like a repeatable threat.
It's insane.
You could just keep this active just to use this effect. It's like kind of. I know Magic Mirror is already not good enough anymore in set 2, but if you compare this to something like that, this is kind of you pay 3 and then you don't even have to ink. You can just pay 2 to draw a card each turn if your deck is like mostly your only characters.
Bro, this is a control deck's worst nightmare.
Yeah,
worst nightmare. Like, this is one of the best aggro cards I think I've ever seen. Think about like a standard Amber Amethyst or Amber whatever aggro. You take out some of the card, like this card is insane. I don't know. I felt like I was high on it, and then you said that, and I'm like, oh my god, how would you deal with this? Because the card advantage is insane.
And it leaves you so flexible because, first of all, you can activate the effect without resting it, but also if you're ever scared of this like being removed anyways, or you think you don't no longer need the effect, it's still possible to quest and do this effect.
Yeah.
Both in the same time.
This card would be insane if it said all this text and it didn't have the end where it said otherwise put on the bottom of your deck. Like if it was like you paid 2 to reveal it and now this card is bricked, right? You hit a song, this card is bricked, you can't draw any more cards for the rest of the turn, and you have like 6 more resources available. Like the flexibility that you can actually put a song on the bottom of your deck. So if you were playing Amber, Amethyst, Aggro, you can still put the friends on the other side on the bottom of the deck if you want to. This is the best card I've seen so far. This card is nuts.
Yeah, I think I want to point out that this is the first card in Lorcana that we've seen with this effect that says you just may pay 2 and it doesn't exert. I think it is the first card that has an effect like this. So super cool. My final note on it would be I would prefer if it was a 2/3 rather than a 3/2, but that's probably just to balance it, right? So it can be removed a lot easier. Yeah. Okay, next card is Dalmatian Puppy, also an Amber, 2-cost inkable 2/3. With the effect, where did they all come from? You may have up to 99 copies of Dalmatian Puppy Tail Wagger in your deck. And just so Brendan and Moyen, just so you guys know, there's like 4 or 5 different variants of this card, obviously, so you can just keep putting in as many puppies as you want.
Yeah.
Weird card to evaluate without knowing other cards, I'd say, right?
Yeah, there needs to be synergy for a Dalmatian puppy, or it wouldn't make sense.
Yeah, it's cards like this exist in Magic. They're kind of memes. I'm not sure if we said this was Amber too.
I did. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, they're kind of a meme in Magic, and I think it'll be a meme here. That being said, if you had if you had a card that said, look at the top card of your deck, if it's the card you name, you can draw it. And then you could activate that a lot and like turbo draw through your entire deck. And I don't know. It's like there's definitely some degenerate things you can do with this, but we'll see. This card outside of context, like in very specific context, is a bad card. It's a 2-cost. 2-cost 2/3 is actually not the worst stat line, but it's a 2-cost 2/3, and the ability is somewhat irrelevant. That being said, combo decks, I'll be revisiting this card. It's a cool tool.
Mm-hmm. Next card is a Ruby card. It's Moana, Born Leader, 5-cost inkable 4/4, Bloodborne, with Shift Tree. Welcome to my boat. Whenever this character quests while at a location, ready all other characters here. They can't quest for the rest of this turn. This card also quests for 2. So, kind of interesting. You have to have multiple characters on a specific location, and then the idea is that you can either get value from them by singing or like double attacking, right? That's the whole thing of readying a character. Or not even just double attacking, like you quest with a high value character and then you just ready it and protect it, right?
Yeah. This ability might be more relevant because we've seen stuff like this before. Might be more relevant with locations. I think prior to that, I would prefer to play something more along the lines of a Maui in my 5-drop slot almost every single time. Moyen?
Yeah, the effect of this is, I think, a little bit slow for what it does. So it's a 5-cost, it's 4/4 that quests for 2, which is a little below what we would usually want. And then I don't think the effect will offset that disadvantage often enough. I think it's unless there's like some cards that really, maybe there's some locations where you like exert cards and then they get put back up for the locations effect, and that's really strong. But just for questing and saving it, or questing and then attacking, I am not too impressed. I think it's a little too slow.
Sure. Next card is Scrooge McDuck within Sapphire, 5-cost uninkable, richest duck in the world, 3/5 quest for 1. With an effect, I'm going home. During your turn, this character gains evasive. And then also, I didn't get rich by being stupid. During your turn, whenever this character banishes another character in a challenge, you may play an item for free. So maybe we slot this card into the item deck. Maybe we don't slot this card into the item deck. Let me just say that there is one item that you guys haven't seen yet that you would, of course, want to combo. I'll just say it's a very, very, very high cost item. So it's probably literally just for that. Because I'd want to be cheating out at least a 4-cost item or higher to actually be trying to play this card, in my opinion.
Honestly, I think I would cheat out. So meta context, I'm actually taking meta into context here because evasives are meta in Lorcana, period. They will continue to be meta. They warp the entire game currently. That's why we're seeing so many evasives printed, I think, in set 2 and 3 is like ways to deal with this. But in the current context of the meta, with all these evasives running around, I'd probably be okay cheating out like even 1 to 2 cost items with this. I know that cheating out like a 6+ cost or something like that, that'd be great. But if I'm looking at the floor, if I have a 3/5 that kills 2 Mickey Mouses and I'm cheating out items, like that's I might play it, to be honest. Like Fidget, or not Fidget, but the other counterpart, the Cruella de Vil. I guess it does a better job declaring evasives, but yeah. It's okay for 5 costs and inkable. I think it might be a bit too slow in the current meta.
What are you laughing at, Moyen?
Oh, this was the missing piece. Finally, we can put Dinner Bell in our deck.
Oh my god!
Dinner Bell for 0, actually pretty playable.
What, you still have to banish your character with Dinner Bell?
I know, but that, because that would be Sapphire Ruby, so it would be in the ramp deck. So I think it could work there. But in general, I like this card because it's a tool for 2 different things. It's evasive hate, and maybe you can have some synergy with expensive items. So it's not like a baseline good card, but it can see some play.
Yeah,
sure.
I don't think it's a baseline good card. I do want to clarify if it did come off like I thought.
But maybe it can be a good tech card for the right meta, or maybe it can work with some crazy items.
Yeah, for sure. I wouldn't be like, if they're, like Kawa said, I haven't seen the item, but if there are some obscenely broken items that you can cheat out with this could be one of the most popular cards in the game. It could, but outside of the context of that item, 5 cost and inkable, 3/5. Not good enough.
I think if this was just evasive, not during your turn, this game's evasive, that'd be very good. I think it'll be really, really good because you're gonna just protect it, and then your opponent has no true way to. Well, not no true way to answer it, but right, this doesn't just die to like a Maui or something like that, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit of an issue that after the first time you got value out of this is completely exposed.
Mhm.
Yeah. So yeah, if this just said evasive and didn't have the ability, I think they would need to quest for 2 for it to be playable at least. Like I think questing for 1 and being evasive is actually pretty underwhelming, even if you have a good stat line.
No,
Like-
but evasive is still better than this effect. Oh, you mean evasive and when you banish something?
No, Brendan's Brendan's just saying that typically you want to be playing evasive cards because they're questing for more. But I kind of agree with Moyen here that if this still was evasive, the reason why this would just be still good even by questing for 1 is how often are you actually going to be questing for 1? You want to try and do the challenge. I know what you're saying, Brendan. If there is no challenge to do or no good favorable trade, you kind of want to be questing for 2. But then I think the card is just very powerful in like all 3 aspects, right? Like it's just good because it's evasive, it's good because it quests for a decent amount, and it's good because you get really good value if you trade.
I think I misheard you. I thought you guys were talking about. I was like, oh, if it didn't have the ability, the item cheating ability, it would be playable if it said it was evasive.
Oh,
all the
no.
time.
No.
Okay.
Just like if it was evasive all the time instead of just on our turn.
Yeah, I think it'd be really good.
That'd be
then.
great.
Yeah.
All right. Next card is Flotsam with an Emerald, free cost, inkable, 5/2. Interesting stat line that I don't think we've really seen before. Your character's name Jetsam, get +3 attack, quest for 1. So this is just the whole kind of Jetsam and Flotsam thing. Can also pair this card with like the Amethyst versions, which I can't remember which one it was. I think it was Jetsam was actually decent because it was like an evasive 4 cost 3/3.
It was like the 15th, 8th, 9th, and 60th card in the deck. Yeah. It was evasive hate.
The next card is, of course, Jetsam, Emerald as well, 3 cost, inkable 2/2 with Ward, quests for 2. And the effect is your character's name Flotsam, gain Ward. So the idea of this kind of 2 cards that you play to combo is that Flotsam, you're never really questing with him. He's just there to buff up your Jetsam, but then doesn't really make much sense to me because why do you want a buff card that's actually going to be questing for more? So I don't know, like maybe you want to mix, if you're just going to be playing a Flotsam Jetsam deck, both like a Emerald Amethyst thing, maybe it's good, but on paper these cards don't seem great.
Even together these cards are terrible.
Yeah, it's a non-bow, right? You don't like the payoff of each is like their stat lines are like those are the abilities you don't really want on them.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, so I'm not completely considering both the Jetsam and Flotsam we have already, but just these 2 together are terrible because this Flotsam gives 3 power to a card that will be a 5/2 instead of a 2/2, and 5/2 is a really bad stat line.
Yeah.
And it's a card that quests for 2, so it doesn't really care about the 3 attack either. And the Jetsam gives Flotsam Ward. So, okay, nice. My 5/2 that quests for 1 now has Ward. I don't think that matters either.
I don't know, if there's some weird deck that really cares about cards that have like 5 attack or whatever, like, I don't know. I don't even want to think about that.
The only thing I could see is like the Flotsam at the 5/2 stat line like trading up consistently because there's some weird threat that exists in the metagame that comes down on 3, has ward, you have to trade with it via combat, and it's very, very pesky. Maybe. It's like a Gaston level kind of card, but I still don't think it's playable.
The Flotsam is basically like, I just feel like you don't care about that your character's name Jetsam get +3 attack. Like, I literally don't care about that effect on the card at all. Yeah.
Yeah, it trades very well against the Prince, the bodyguard, resist +1/+1.
Yeah, so does Madam Mim, and you think about the value of that card. Yeah, it's insane. All right. Next card is a Sapphire item, 2 cost, inkable, Aurelian Gyro Sensor. Seeking knowledge is the effect. Whenever one of your characters quests, you may look at the top card of your deck, put it on either top or bottom of your deck. So this is pretty much just a scry whenever any of your cards quest. Is this... Would you just call this a better Ursula's Cauldron?
Worse. Worse.
Worse.
No, the effect is worse, but it's inkable.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that part's
sure.
better.
We evaluated this card, I think, already in like an early episode. It's like this card by itself, I don't think is good at all. And also with other cards, I think it's probably still bad. But there are some additional cards that are coming out in set 3 that really care about you knowing the top of your deck, which I think is a sick mechanic. I love that mechanic. But This one is, in my opinion, much more. It's much less impressive than some of the other counterparts we've seen.
Sure. Next card is an Amber card. It's an action, 99 puppies, 5 cost, uninkable. Whenever one of your characters quests this turn, gain 1 lore. We were just kind of talking about the value of like lore if it was like 0 or whatever. This card looks pretty bad. This card looks really, really bad. It kind of reminds. I mean, it's much worse, but it kind of reminds me of what's the card in Hearthstone, Moyen? It's like it's like the Shaman call,
like
Shaman
Bloodlust?
card 5. Yeah, like Bloodlust. It's like kind of like your aggro push. If you two turn around and tell me that this card is good,
No, I won't.
He's like so scared.
I'm like, don't do this to me, please. It's gotta be a bad card, man. It's gotta be.
Oh man, this card reminds me of Zero to Hero. Actually, this card reminds me of a Lorcana card. It really does.
Yeah.
It's just like the same conditions.
Because it's like it's not that hard to make up a scenario where this card would be good. It's just this scenario won't happen often enough for an uninkable card to see play, I think. So like you would need like a token deck. You want to flood the board, but then like you kind of would want to set this up so like maybe for a few turns not quest. So then you can set up a white board and then puppies and quest with all of them. The problem with that is then if any board wipe comes into play, like Tinkerbell, grab your sword or be prepared, then that you lost all the turns where you could have been questing and where you were setting up for this. So there's huge risk. Alongside that as well.
I don't even think you would play this. Like, if some people in their mind are thinking, oh, like, we could probably try this in an aggro deck. I don't think you're ever playing this in an aggro deck at all. Because, like, you're not going to get much value for this card. You're really, really not. And it costs so much. If you're trying to play an aggro deck, you will get there faster by just doing what your deck does best with, like, your early drops. Like, yeah, I don't know. Very, very unimpressed with this. But maybe someone whips out, the weird puppy deck that, you play all your puppies for 0, keep drawing infinite puppies, and then you just play this or some shit. I don't know. I don't see the synergy right now, though.
Worst card in the set.
Wasn't there some Emerald card in the first set that did
what?
something along these lines? I don't know. Was it a casket or?
Yeah,
I can't remember.
It's a high achievement, I think, to be the worst card in the set. But this one is currently it stands on the podium.
Oh, it's Steal from the Witch that I'm thinking of, which is a 5-cost uninkable action also in Emerald that says whenever one of your characters quests this turn, each opponent loses 1 lore, which is like kind of the same. It's not the same, but it's I guess gaining a lore is better than them losing a lore for this type of card. But it's still pretty terrible. It's just
not even a
very
song.
funny
Like
because
if this card was a song, I still wouldn't play it. Like, honestly, bro, it's like I can't. All right. Next card. We have a steel card, 4-cost uninkable song, and then along came Zeus. It's deal 5 damage to chosen character or location. So we're seeing some location removal. And I think this card overall, from most locations I've seen, I do think I want to say that I think it could be playable from initial impressions. If you want to have a tool that deals with locations, I think it's quite good. Notably, you want to just think about, since this is a 4-cost song, if you think of like the traditional Amber Steel decks, you only really care about like 3-cost songs and 5-cost songs. This might be a reason that you want to actually play that Sebastian card, which is specifically Singer 4. I'm just thinking traditionally of that Amber Steel deck if you want to come into a more control thing, because previously Sebastian was never considered in those decks because there was no good 4-cost song to sing within Steel or Amber. Hakuna Matata was the only 4-cost, and people only played that because it was free ink when you played Ariel. So for once, I'll just take a pretty decent card for a Singer 4 target. Just a good card in general if you want to be removing locations.
There's one thing I want to say, which is hitting a chosen character. Video audio listeners will not be seeing this, but I'm using my hands. Hitting a chosen character is way better than hitting a chosen location, because hitting a chosen character is something that you cannot interact with generally via combat. Locations are always tapped. You can always do combat with locations. So hitting a chosen character is like, that's the gold standard of this card. The location is just like this little bit of upside, I think, because locations are much more.
It's a very good upside because most removal might not work on locations. I think this card's very, very impressive.
Yeah,
it's like very impressive. I think this card. Okay, it's
so we just had the worst card of the set, and then Moyen saying so far this is the best card we've seen in the set. Is that what we're saying?
Honestly, this might be the best card I've seen so far. this card's really good. It's uninkable, which is a little bit of a shame, but it's if we compare to what removal we have so far, I think it's better than basically everything, just like value wise. So we could compare this to something like Smash, which is it's inkable, but
it's not a song either, right? Yeah.
What about
It's
Let
not
the
a song.
Storm Rage On? Because that one draws a card.
Yeah, I mean that Stormage On is also crazy good, but this is 4-cost deal 5, which can trade up very easily. This answers like even a beast that costs more than this. I think lots of very expensive cards still don't have that much more HP than 5. Of course, it matters if you can't one-shot something greatly, but I think deal 5 will still kill a lot of stuff, even some of the more expensive stuff. And it's a song.
Yeah,
it's just very, very good.
It's a good card.
Some people, so this is still not a card that you just put into every deck, right? It's still a meta dependent card. Is this 5 damage breakpoint important? But I think this card in general is very, very good.
I agree.
Yeah, I think it's hard. It's hard to disagree with it, to be honest. Like seeing how powerful like these other target removal cards, especially the song versions of them are, and we know that the defense value so there's defense breakpoints in Lorcana. The first one is 3. 3 is way better than 2. We all know that. The other one is 5. Like the other one, not 5. So the other one is 6. Because 5 is this that's where a lot of these cards exist. And then when something gets to 6 defense, it's like in a whole nother bracket. Much harder to kill.
Yeah, no, this card will be the reason why we will suddenly want to be playing card that with like at least 6 HP.
Out of 6 instead of 5. I do agree.
Bringing back Vanilla Cerebus. Let's go.
All right, next card is Simba, also a steel card, 5 cost, inkable for 6. Quest for 1 with an effect, Triumphant Stance. During your turn, whenever this character banishes another character in a challenge, chosen opposing character can't challenge during their next turn. So, I don't know.
I don't like it. I don't like the stat line. It's a 4/6. We just talked about 6 HP. I don't like 4 attack. And that effect is just not fantastic.
Do you know the only reason in my mind why a card like this might have been printed in this set is because we're expecting a lot of combat that hit into locations and stuff. So that's probably the mindset for me is you stop your opponent from actually hitting into a location, right? But overall, I don't think it's going to be great. There's no reason for me to want to put this in a deck.
Yeah, this card is I think it's just uncommon chaff, to be honest. I don't think it will be played, which it's funny because me saying that just brought up a memory where I saw Lorcana content creator and kind of mutual friend of the pod, Phonetic, tweeted out, set 3 looks like bulk so far, but I don't know, and he deleted the tweet. So I was like, oh, I wonder why he thinks this. I clicked and it was deleted. Just gotta put him on blast.
So basically 5 cost 4/6, we don't want that. Quest for 1, we don't want that. The effect is slow, and then even when you get the effect off, it's like it's not impressive at all. Just to say something it's not locking something from completely doing anything. It's just, this guy can challenge, but it can still quest.
I'd rather if it was stopping from questing than challenging, 100%.
Yeah, even that wouldn't be good, I think.
Yeah.
I don't think that would be good, but it would be better. It would definitely be better.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, next,
not good.
Next card is one that is kind of interesting because Ruby Amethyst has been a staple deck on this podcast. So if this card was in set 1, would be played over Gaston. So it is Deladuck in Ruby, 2 cost, uninkable, 3/3 with Reckless. So 2 cards I want to compare this to. Compare it to Gaston, which already is inkable, and it's a 4/2, which really helped in set 1, killing off Cusco. That 4 attack was really, really key. And also, you just compare this to Madam M Snake, and Madam M Snake's infinitely better than this card. Obviously, it doesn't have the restriction that, but if you're playing Madam M Snake, you should be running enough 1-drops in your deck to make the snake worthwhile. So I just think this is a little bit too slow, but maybe in a deck that you don't, you want to do Ruby and something else that you really care about, a 2 cost 3/3, and your ratio of uninkables to inkables is more inkables, and you can afford to play this card, maybe it's okay. Because we have seen that 2 cost 3/3s are good in the game, right? So,
yeah, they're very good. So this being uninkable is a little bit of a shame, and you wouldn't want to play this in a deck where you play a lot of early game. I think maybe this is if you play a very late game oriented deck, you can just jam this into your deck to somehow hope to survive the early game. If there's like lots of 2/3s in the meta, like Simba, where you can expect this to 2-for-1 a lot of the time. So it's still not a terrible card, but it will need very specific scenario to be good.
I mean,
Sure.
I think meta context, this card could be super relevant. I just like a lot of these control decks, like because some of the top end things that control decks can do in Lorcana are just obscene, right? You can draw a lot of cards. They can wipe the entire board. Like some of these effects are so powerful, and it's like the kryptonite of those decks is just these aggro decks that get out and go under them. So this card it's pretty powerful, especially if you're playing Ruby or something that's not Amethyst. You don't have access to the Mana Min package. Let's be real, like.
Is this card aggro though? Like just because it can't quest, right?
No,
like,
it's anti-aggro.
It's anti-aggro.
Yeah.
So I feel like if you're playing Ruby with another card for control, this is absolutely a card I would consider. Because a lot of those decks, like the only thing they lose to is like these aggro decks just going under them. I think this card is great. Just for the Gaston comparison, yeah, Gaston was played in set one just because of Cusco. Like it traded up in Cusco every time. Cusco is pretty much everywhere. And even outside of Cusco, I guess it usually traded up. So that's kind of
and Simba.
Yeah, that's kind of why we
just
played.
Kill Simba at least,
Yeah,
which is very important, so you can access the 1-drops.
I think it's a good card. We see a lot of aggro cards printed that are like, oh, they're so powerful, but this is a good card for control. I'm not saying it's going into every deck, but it's a tool that I would not be surprised to see decks utilize.
I'm happy to see this in Ruby because it does. I mean, the deck we've been trying to get away as much as we love it is Ruby Amethyst. Like to try and finally start pairing Ruby with other in combinations. I think you can really consider this card in those control decks.
Exactly. I don't think this goes into Ruby Amethyst actually because Ruby Amethyst right now, obviously Amethyst has a lot of draw, but I feel like a draw engine to draw more cards. But I feel like one of the reasons that Ruby has to be paired with Amethyst is also because that Mana Min package. Like it's just too good. It's just too good against like these early game threats. It was a huge upgrade to the deck. This gives you more flexibility in pairing Ruby with another color.
Honestly, so with White Circumstance, maybe this is play, but I think I'm starting to realize more and more how huge the downside of this card is in comparison to Gaston, because with this being uninkable and reckless, and not having rush, that means if you draw this at any turn, like let's say starting at like 5 ink, if you draw this might just not be playable for the rest of the game. Or like it'd be a really bad card for the rest of the game. And you cannot ink it instead. You cannot use it to at least threaten like one lore instead. This will be almost dead in some matchups. So I think the downside for including this card into your deck is huge. So this is not that likely to see any play, I think.
Interesting, for sure. Our next card is Jim Hawkins, also a Ruby card, 2-cost inkable, 3/2 vanilla card that just quests for 1. I have to actually scroll back down just to see if that other Jim Hawkins was a Floodborn that had shift. It's not, and I actually can't remember if there's another Jim Hawkins that has shift. But cards like this, to me, like vanilla cards that are just like 2 costs or whatever, and the stats are like whatever. Usually, to me, it's just like, okay, is this? It doesn't really matter because whenever you evaluate shift cards, you should just be evaluating the cards itself, but it's something to consider that they probably print cards like this either just to, have kind of filler, or if it's going to be a future shift card.
Yep.
Next card is Morph, which we discussed last week, and a lot of people had stuff to say. A lot of people were saying, "Oh, this card can be really." I think what we said was fair, honestly. I think a lot of people are talking about it because I don't know if you guys saw it. This is actually Morph got an enchanted version, which is really funny because people cropped the enchanted version into like the painting of like Michelangelo in the like chapel or some shit, which was kind of funny. But yeah, we've already kind of talked about this. Do you guys want to talk about this card anymore? It's 2-cost inkable, 2/1. Basically, this can be your shift target for any character, essentially. So any more thoughts on the card, or just still what you said?
So Morph, this is basically reiterating what we talked about. Morph will be good if there is a character that has a shift. It has to shift onto something that's already expensive. So if you're cheating resources by shifting it onto a 2-cost rather than, let's say there was something that was a 9-cost and you have to shift it onto a 5-cost or something ridiculous like that, then yeah, Morph would probably be your go-to shift for that. That's the main use case that I see. Also, this, like, if you have a deck that is very, very dependent on you shifting a specific character, like that's your entire game plan and it is obscenely powerful, then yeah, Morph could just be you doubling the targets and able to shift that onto. That's the use case I see for Morph.
Yeah, or maybe if you have a lot of different cards you want to shift on stuff, but you don't want to play all the different smaller characters for that.
Yeah.
Maybe Morph can be okay, but in general, I really don't see it.
Yeah, in general, shifting is bad too.
Yeah.
Like shifting is
like you lose a card.
Yeah, it's pretty bad, and you can get 2 for 1. Like it's a not the best mechanic, and we've seen that play out so far in Lorcana. Outside, of course, like obviously we know the Ember Steel decks exist. It is shifting for a very specific reason, but overall,
I think overall, yeah. In set 2, the only card we really cared about shifting was pretty much the Queen. I can't think of any meta deck that really cared about the shift aspect in terms of actually getting
it's just
value from that.
It kind of is the most about Queen, sometimes about the big stage, sometimes about Big Cinderella, but not that.
That's pretty much it. I mean, like think about Tremaine, Yzma.
Big Tinkerbell was like Tinkerbell shifting is important because otherwise you tie to aggro sometimes. So coming down earlier can matter, but
I think that's the most relevant, but I think people have also accepted that just playing Tinkerbell for 6 is still very good. Like I've seen majority of players not run the 3-drop Tink and just stick with the 6 cost.
Also because you still have the option to like shift Queen and just cast Grab Your Sword or hard cast Grab Your Sword, and then that's usually good enough.
All right, next card is a Ruby card, Prince Eric, 4 cost uninkable 2/2, quest for 2. When this character is banished, you may banish chosen character. Initial thoughts on this one? I would like to see an additional effect on this card, like maybe Ward, honestly. I think if this card had Ward as well, it would be quite good. Because then it's kind of like a better Cusco, a little bit of a cheaper Cusco with like weirder stats. But yeah, I'd like to see Ward because I would hate to play this 4 cost uninkable 2/2 and then they just remove it. I would hate that so much.
Yeah, but if they already had any board, at least you're getting something out of it. Most cards can be removed.
That's true. So if they just remove this, then you're going to guarantee kill one of their things. Yeah, maybe it's okay. Yeah.
I think the card's all right at first sight. The stat line is a little bit low, so I'm afraid that, let's say, I play it next turn, I crest, and then it gets traded, that the trade is so efficient for my opponent that me being able to banish one of their characters that they already had played, because they will trade
their only character
first, and then they will play a big character.
Yeah, then imagine that.
I'm a little afraid that will happen too often, where we won't get enough value out of the body and the effect together to make it worthwhile. But I think in general, I can still discard seeing play. I think it's still a decent card.
Yeah.
Brennan?
It's tough. It's a tough card. Yeah, I think it's a little expensive, to be honest, for the effect. But it is a powerful effect. It's just like, in my opinion, I see the floor on this card being really, really bad in a lot of scenarios, and that's what I would like to avoid. Like you said, your opponent 1-for-1 trading it with nothing else on board. Your opponent trading it as an aggro deck, and basically they're trading this and not dying. They're trading this for something that has a X3 stat line, and then you're pinging off like a 1-drop. So they attacked you with a 1-drop, and you pinged off a 1-drop. It's like it's not. I think it's not great. So I think the floor is a bit dangerous with this card, but ultimately the effect could be pretty powerful. I guess I'll be pretty clear about my position, as I don't see myself immediately playing this card.
Sure. Yeah, %. Our next card is a Sapphire card, 5 cost inkable Tinkerbell, 3/4 quest for 2. Whenever one of your items is banished, you may put that card into your inkwell face down and exerted. Do we think this is a little bit too slow in a ramp deck, or do we think it's okay because we can ramp into this early and then you could get like would you put this into an item deck now, is my question.
No.
Sure.
Never. Because it's expensive, and the effect is so conditional and not that crazy.
Well, those item decks also are utilizing other things to ramp, like the quill.
You want to ramp earlier than that. I don't want to play that, have an item, banish that item, and then use that to ink. Also,
Flaversham's way better than banishing. Like, if do I gain 1 extra resource by banishing my card, or would I draw 2 cards? I'm drawing 2 cards.
Also, Flaversham is a 1/6 and can do it like
multiple times.
Okay, that's also repeatable, but Flaversham is a lot easier to repeat. Also, the current item deck versions care about, is it called graveyard?
Discard. Your discard pile.
Discard pile, yeah. So they care about the items being in the discard pile. If you have to ink the item, then you can no longer get it back with
Tamatoa with Nick
the
Nick
Fox.
Wild or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah. Sure.
So
That's fair.
I think this card's awful.
All right. Go ahead, Brennan. You gonna say something? No?
Oh, I just think it's too expensive. Yeah, I think it's too expensive. Maybe, maybe. Like, I don't know. I just feel like once you're at this ink value, like, I don't think it goes in the item decks whatsoever. Like, those decks, I just don't think it goes in those decks. But ultimately,
Yeah, then it doesn't go into any deck.
yeah, exactly. I mean, there could be some sort of Sapphire-based control deck that doesn't use items in the future, but I still think that for ramp, it's just too slow. I'd rather be ramping with cheaper cards.
Yeah, but if you don't use items, then this effect doesn't do anything.
It's weird because the effect, whenever one of your items is banished, that's actually hilarious.
Yeah.
It's weird because, it's a non-bow with the item decks, of course, but yeah, it's weird because you're basically turning the banishing of your item into drawing a card and inking, because you would be inking the card.
Yeah.
I think it's bad. I think it's bad. I'll say that. I'm willing to be wrong. I think it's bad.
Next card is also Sapphire card, also 5-cost inkable. Audrey Ramirez, 2/5 with ward, quest for 2. Whenever this character quests ready one of your items, you'll see maybe some value where this card has when we look at the next 2 items we're going to talk about, but I do think it's maybe too much of a dream. But I don't know. I think this effect is kind of powerful if you combo it with the correct item, but it's also... Yeah, I don't know. I think you might, we can try evaluate this card once we see the other 2 item cards, but I don't think it's going to instantly be like, oh, we run 4 of these all the time. You know what I mean?
The ward and the ability are a non-bow.
Yes.
Because ward,
Non-bow,
you want
what
ward,
does it mean?
It means a not combo, right? Like it's the opposite of a combo.
No, but it is a combo.
I feel like
how is it a non-bow?
Because if you have something with ward, you generally don't want to be questing with it. You want a static effect where this has ward, but it quests, so it can be killed.
No, it's completely a combo, because this having ward means it will get to quest at least once a lot more often than if it didn't have ward. So I think it completely synergizes with an effect that's on quest. Even if you only get it off once, but you will get it off once more often than if it didn't have ward.
Interesting. Yeah, I think with ward, I would rather that be on a static ability than something that makes me tap my character.
But it's still very good on an on-quest ability because of what I said. But because let's say the usual answer to this would be Dragonfire and then along came Zeus, and suddenly those won't be options, and you will very often get this effect off. So if you can set up an item where this effect's powerful, I think a 2/5 ward, you get this effect off once. I think this card has potential.
I think it's fair to say. I think basically how we're looking at it, Brendan, is we're really caring about the 2 lore here, but maybe we shouldn't be. We should be just caring about the effect. Because the effect, if you combo with a certain card, is probably good enough. But
all of that together is just decent.
Yeah, sure.
I think for me, it's when you put ward on a card, you pay a cost for it, because it doesn't come for free, right? You pay theoretically, you pay a stat line cost, you pay a cost, 5 cost, where you pay a lore cost. And I would rather not pay the ward cost on a card like this. I'd rather have a different ability, I think, sometimes, than ward. So ward for me on something that has to quest is just a little bit less value. The ability is really hard for me to evaluate because currently there's no items that are...
Yeah, so that's the part we can't really evaluate. I'm just saying the baseline is so decent already that as soon as we get a little bit of value out of the effect, then I think the card already has potential.
Okay, sure.
So this is not bulk.
Yeah, okay. Next card is a Ruby card, item, pre-cost inkable, Sumerian Talisman, with an effect Source of Magic. During your turn, whenever one of your characters is banished in a challenge, you may draw a card. Moyen's laughing. Go on, tell us, Moyen.
That was before I heard the word in a challenge. I thought this was dinner bell synergy, but it's not.
Yeah, I think this card's really bad, to be honest. You might be able to draw a card with it, but it's just terrible rate, to be honest. You have to understand that when you play this card, you're also kind of discarding this card. So you have to draw 2 cards with it. Even then, the rate isn't good because it's 3-cost songs that draw 2 cards. It's just a terrible card outside of item synergy.
Sure.
I think some people could think this card's good. I think the easiest way to explain why I don't think it's that good is because inherently when you're challenging a character with a character, the way you want to be challenging characters is that their character dies and yours survives.
Mhm.
The challenges you do where both characters die, or just yours, are not that worthwhile. It's not that those are not the challenges you want to be doing. So, but only those challenges are the ones you will be profiting off with this card. So you don't gain extra value on challenges you already want to be doing. You just gain some value on challenges that are a little bit mid to do.
Yeah,
So,
this card would be a lot better if it was when. I don't know about a lot better, but it would be better if it said instead of whenever a character is banished in a challenge.
Yeah, would be a lot better. Or whenever one of your characters challenges an opposing character, I think even that would be better than if the condition is one of your characters needs to be banished.
Oh, sure, that's a card. That's a text that we already have in a card, right? I think that's the Queen's text. Is like whenever you challenge a card, then you draw a card, which is good.
Yeah, I think that on an item could be pretty good.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Sacrifice. I don't know. This may lead to situations where you have the option to do a bad trade, but at least you draw a card and you will be considering, oh, is this even worthwhile? And that's why I don't think you're getting that much value out of the Sumerian Talisman.
Yeah, this card is unplayable for me. So even in item synergy decks, you still want your items to cost less than 3 as well. So, yeah, I would be unplayable. Okay,
here we go, boys. The big legendary item, the first legendary item in Lorcana, 7 cost uninkable sapphire card, Lucky Dime, with the effect number 1. Tap, pay 2, choose a character of yours, and gain lore equal to their lore.
Yes, we did review a card where you can cheat this card out. Well, oh, man, I don't know if you can play this for 7 ink and not instantly lose the game. Can you imagine?
Lose the game to a Benja.
Yeah, can you imagine if someone Benja'd this?
Yeah.
You can't evaluate. Yeah, you can't evaluate all cards on the context of like, oh, if my opponent uses a tech card. But I also think that you can't pay 7 for this. Like that's just
no, you can't.
It's
you
just
really
way
can't.
too
classic turn for this. But cheating this out, there's a lot of potential for this. Suddenly, you can just play. I think the easiest application is it Alice, the one that quests for 4 if you have 10? Or is it 5?
She quests for 5 if you have a character with
extra.
10. I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
So no, not that cut. I meant the one where you have like 10 ink.
Bell, right?
Bell, yeah. So I think the easiest application for this is Bell, but still you need to be cheating out the item because I think it's too much of a tempo loss to play.
So yeah, redeeming qualities. You can. I think this is getting ink. Was it ink flesh? What's the quill?
This get fishbone quilled. Yeah, this get fishbone quilled.
Yeah, I think this is getting quilled like 95% of the time in your hand. Well, that's actually an upside though, is you can play a card this bad in your deck because outside of some of this like these specific scenarios, this card is so bad. At least you can turn it into a resource in some of these decks. I still think it's just so clunky.
Well, that's an upside for Quill, not an upside for
Quill. Yeah, this card's a stretch.
Yeah, as soon as I saw this card, I was like, bro, if people play Benji against me, it's the worst feeling ever. It is such a bad feeling.
Even without that. Like you can't
even just passing to play this, yeah.
You can't do it for 7. For 7, that's so expensive. Like your opponent's dropping like Ursula level power cards and you're dropping this. It's like you have to have a board for this too. Like,
no, you don't have to have a board because
true. You can play something after.
Just play it and activate it. Let's say we have cheated out this Lucky Dime somehow because otherwise it's pretty bad. But then also the synergy with Audrey Ramirez comes into play. Because suddenly we play the Ramirez.
Yeah.
It has ward, they can't deal with it, and the next turn we are threatening to play Bell and then use Lucky Dime twice, and suddenly that's 10 lore in one turn.
Yeah,
without a board.
Mm-hmm.
Without a board.
But that's
actually
3-card combo.
No, it's 12. It's 12 lore because Ramirez also quests for 2.
So let's give me a 3-card combo. One of the cards is, in my opinion, Lucky Dime. Without that combo, is a very very bad card. Ramirez is more playable just as its vanilla stat, like it's just as a stat line.
Yeah,
and then Scrooge McDuck, the cheater, I guess is serviceable. I guess it's serviceable without the effect. So,
well, the deck you guys are kind of describing is probably a deck I think people will experiment with because I'm not going to get into it yet, but I think I will say Sapphire Amethyst I think will be a deck that will be very much experimented at the start because There's another card that we will see down the line. It doesn't. What I'll say is it doesn't actually combo with Lucky Dime. It does combo with Lucky Dime, but people thought you could basically get like 14 lore in one turn by doing it. But I just want to note on Lucky Dime, it does say choose a character of yours and gain lore equal to their lore. So it does work with cards like Belle. It does work with other cards. But there's a specific card you're gonna see in a little bit that doesn't have lore printed on the card, but it gains lore through doing like a tapped ability or something like that. So some people got confused that, oh, you just gain whatever lore this card gained, but it's not printed on the card. So yeah, we'll get into it anyways.
Can you choose your own? I just forget. Can you choose your own characters if they have ward?
Yes, because
yes, I do believe so. Opponents can
okay.
choose. Yes. Okay, next card is a song. It's a Sapphire song, 5-cost inkable friend like me. Each player puts the top 3 cards of their deck into their inkwell, face down and exerted. What do you think?
I think it's too slow. I think it's like the thesis of Ramp. Like Ramp wants to be doing other things on turn 5 than accelerating. Ramp accelerates on turns that are not turn 5. I mean, this is like you're like turbo ramping, right? Like you're whole new worlding like after you do this, I guess, and you're whole new worlding the turn after. I don't know. It doesn't seem great to me. I feel like I'd rather be ramping with the cheaper stuff.
But maybe this enables ramp in decks that don't play Whole New World, because usually you ramp on the cost of hand size, but this card enables just symmetrical ramp, but at least you still have hand size. So maybe you can ramp in Amber with this and just play Ariel and sing this, and then just play a bigger deck than your opponent.
Yeah, but I think you would always and I know what I'm saying is to be obvious. You like if that was a scenario, you'd always rather play the deck that plays the early stuff and then plays Whole New World. Like Shift plays a Whole New World and gets like the massive card advantage, right?
It is
like
probably better.
The symmetrical effect of this is like a huge downside. Also, it's a turn 5 play. That's my thoughts.
No, it's not a turn 5 play, because I'm singing this. I think if we hardcast this, it's terrible.
Yeah.
And if we sing it, it's also not very good. But I think we need to be singing it for it to be okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the symmetry is going to be rough.
Yeah, because your opponent is the first one to be using the resources. It's not even symmetrical ramp, and you're the first one to get the advantage.
Yep. And that's an important distinction as well.
Yeah, it's very important.
All right, cool. Next card is an Amber card, 1-cost, inkable 2/2. Kida, quest for 1. That's it. Just a vanilla card. I will say that there is a card that you can shift onto after with this card. So if you just want to play the 1-cost for a shift target, it's fine. Next card is an Amber card. It's 4-cost, uninkable, Heart of Atlantis. Tap, you pay 2 less for the next character you play this turn. So basically like a double-costed Lantern.
Lantern, yeah.
So
interesting.
I don't know. Like, can you cheat this out somehow with Scrooge McDuck?
I think it's more about like wheeling your hand right, because I think that's where some of those like things like Lantern are so powerful, is because you put down these like these persistent items that consistently give you resource advantages, and then you cast the I said wheel, but Whole New World, and you get the card asymmetry where you draw way more cards than your opponent, and now you have these persistent things from your previous hand that are enabling you to do powerful things on this new hand. Your opponent maybe only got like 2 cards off of that, you got 7. I just wonder if this is ever better than Lantern.
Yeah, no, it's very okay. It's not very different than Lantern, but Lantern is more to give you a little bit more resources each turn. Lantern is like very early ramp. I would say this card is more like maybe to cheat out a 7-cost on 5 specifically, or a 6-cost, an 8-cost on 6. Also, you can activate it the turn you play it. So you want to be playing 2 drops in a deck like this. So at least the turn you play it, you don't lose all your tempo, but at least you're developing something. But the thing is, when I think Lantern was always like borderline good enough to be played in like very competitive decks. And I think the biggest reason for that was that not playing a 2-drop on 2 wasn't the most tempo loss. It was still okay, because 2 drops were not the greatest statted cards in the game. I don't know if we'll get away with playing a 2-drop on 4 as easily as playing a 1-drop on 2. But that being said, the payoff is also a little bit bigger. I think this card's probably a bit worse than Lantern, but it's still with all its similarities, it's still very different, I think.
I think we it's exactly what you said. I think we really got to see if there's any really good 7 cost cards that you really want to come out on 5. But is that better to just play this and then bring it out, or is like a shift thing better? Because you know what I mean? I think that's probably the key thing where this card sees could see some play.
I think like cheating, you can do like on turn 5, cheating an Ursula with this would be like there's just cards that are not designed to come down on turn 5. They can be super powerful, but
but it's not even Ursula, right? Ursula's a very powerful card, but it's not like you're getting that much extra out of it by playing it earlier. Let's say you're losing tempo turn 4 just to play a big butt on 5. And what will your opponent do? They're not AFK. They can just play something on 4, play something on 5, quest with all of their stuff, and suddenly you might not even be able to quest with your Ursula because you have to be keeping their board in check.
Yeah, we'll see. This is a really powerful effect from what I understand in something like Magic, like these what they would call like mana rocks. So
yeah, and Hearthstone this would also be great.
Yeah,
but there's like it depends on the expensive cards. How can they swing the game? And I think with what we currently have, they don't swing the game by that much, and that's the reason why maybe we are not evaluating these cards super highly.
Yeah,
sure, that's fair. All right, next card is Lyle Tiberius Rourke, Emerald, 3 cost, uninkable, 2/4, like quest for 1. With an ability, it says when you play this character, chosen opposing character gains Reckless during their next turn. Also, whenever one of your other characters is banished, each opponent loses 1 lore. So this kind of seems like just like an all-around, decently statted 3 cost, but it's obviously uninkable, which is a huge drawback. It doesn't blow me out of the water right away, right? It just means like maybe the Reckless when you unplay it means that something can't quest immediately. So even in the late game, maybe this is okay. But whenever one of your other characters is banished, each opponent loses 1 lore. This seems like this kind of seems like a weird Emerald control card, but I don't know if we've seen many Emerald control decks. Like I don't even know if I played in it, you know?
Oh, I don't. Okay, I at first sight, I'm impressed with this card. I think this card's really good, and I don't think it's necessarily control. It's more like a mid-rangey tempo tool where it's decently statted, and every time it does come down, it already prevents some victory points not being given to your opponent. Plus, there will be the scenarios where those will be the scenarios where this card will be best, is where you give Reckless to a card not just so that it can cross, but also so that your opponent is forced to just kill off their own character.
One of your things, which then makes them lose 1 lore
so
as well. Yeah,
sure.
Sure.
You have like a big butt. They can't quest. They're forced to trade into your big butt, and they lose. Maybe your big butt's so big that it doesn't die, and then they don't lose a lore. But I think overall, this card's pretty powerful. I think so far we've had a lot of cards that I think are good enough that they have the potential to see play under the right circumstances. I'm very happy with the cards that we've revealed so far.
But Fnatic said it was bulk. Okay, I'm sorry, Fnatic. My last take. Yeah, I pretty much agree with Moyen. I think that this, if I had to give a contrarian opinion, I had to gamble, for the risk of my reputation. I would say this card won't be played. I'd take that line. I'd take that risk. I'd take that gamble. But I think it's good for all the reasons that Moyen said it's good.
Wait, this is so much. Wait,
so much worse or better than you think?
No, this is even better. You can even, like, let's say late game, you need to be. Okay, this won't come up all the time, right? It's still. We're talking about the same challenges, as in Sumerian Talisman, where sometimes you will already need to take trades where your characters die. And then you just play this down to do some of these trades, and your opponent's already losing lore. Maybe this can even, like, let's say your opponent's threatening lethal, and this is one of the only ways that you could even have to get out of it.
I think you could get a big lore swing out of this, that your opponent has set up a board that if you don't have an efficient way to clear it, but it is very conditional then, right? Like, they've set up a board that if you can't clear it well, you need to have a lot of characters on the board to then also make them force them. So like. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that this is conditional, but the reason I care about this a lot more than I usually would is that that's not the only thing this card does. I think this card's baseline is is pretty good already, and then you also have some conditions under which it can do a lot more than its baseline.
I like the flexibility. Like I do agree that if you had this card in your deck, yeah, the effect would be applicable early game, mid game, and late game.
Yes, which is very important because one of the biggest downsides of any cards that's uninkable is that it's uninkable. But I think uninkable cards that are applicable at all stages of the game are a lot better than uninkable cards that are also sometimes not very good. So, but I think I like this card.
Yep, I agree. Okay, next card is filler, but again, it's just a shift target. It's a Emerald card, 1 cost, inkable, 2/2, quest for 1, Milo Thatch, leading into the Floodborn Milo Thatch with an Emerald, 7 cost, uninkable, 4/4, quest for 3, with an ability reading. When this character is banished, return all opposing characters to their player's hands. So it gives me Vanish vibes from Hearthstone.
Yeah.
What do you think, Moyen?
But it's slow. I don't know.
Yeah, it's slow.
It's not,
you
can't just activate the effect immediately. At least not very easily.
Shift 4 is pretty. Seems pretty interesting.
Shift 4 quest for 3. Template your opponent's entire board. Your own board as well, but yeah.
And then also, most of the time your opponent.
It's not. Sorry, Brendan. It's not your own board. It's return all opposing characters. It's not your board as well.
Asymmetric?
What
the?
I thought it was symmetric at first because you were comparing it to Vanish as well.
That's pretty
so it's
good.
better than Vanish. Sorry, yeah, I confused you guys, right, by saying Vanish, right? Yeah.
Huh. Okay, now I'm a bit higher because at first I thought, okay, every time I have this on the board, my opponent can choose when they kill it and then reset the board, then develop themselves. But you're still keeping your shadows.
This card is potentially busted. I think this card is so good. I don't know. Like I think you have to virtually.
But you still need to be shifting.
You need to be shifting it. Yeah, I think. Yeah, it just seems kind of crazy because like I don't know the question for 3 giving something reckless.
It's even a card that. Yeah. Okay, sorry.
Go ahead. No, you're good.
Because even when you're not shifting this, maybe there's some board states where they're very threatening, but you can take the lore swing if you just ignore it, and then you just play down this card, and suddenly your opponent is in the spot where they can either quest with all their characters, then banish this, then all their cards get bounced, and then they already invested some resources into banishing it, then they need to redevelop, so then it already did a lot of things, and if they can't banish it, there's the scenario where either you can trade this off so it dies to bounce all their characters, or you can just develop behind it and keep this threat on the board that will reset the board at some point.
You're playing green as well. You can give everything reckless as well. Like you have so much access to reckless, forcing your opponent's stuff to have reckless. That is.
Mm-hmm. And also maybe if you can combine this with a color where you can sacrifice this card for some
Dinner Bell.
Maybe not Dinner Bell.
The synergy.
So it needs to be damage for Dinner Bell, right? But yeah, maybe some card that has some payoff for sacrificing can also work well with it.
It's just like a insane tempo exchange that's like being presented with this card. Like, I don't know. There's just a lot of this card that I feel like could have been worded differently and the card would still be pretty good. So it says when this character is banished. I feel like this card could have said like when this card is, when your opponent, not when it's like only when it's attacked, right? So you have to give it reckless. Your opponent can play around it. I think it would still be relevant. You still give things reckless, but this gives you the flexibility to attack it with yourself, which is crazy. And then return all opposing characters to their players' hands. Like I couldn't. I read it the other way because I couldn't fathom that it was just your opposing characters. Like this is a really powerful.
Is there ever a time though where if your opponent can choose to let's just say this card is exerted, right? You've got your 3 lore, your opponent can kill it, but your opponent just quests with all of their stuff, and then
they play goat and then kill it,
and then they do bounce stuff. Like is it?
So
I don't know. I can just see my opponent.
Yeah. You're saying they're getting advantage because they're questing, but they still have to. They have to deploy all that. They have to use all their ink to redeploy
all their ink
to
do it again. Yeah, sure. Or if it's a card that they care about that they want to replay again.
Yeah.
But this would only. I mean, yeah. I what I'm saying is this is only be applicable if you're facing a deck that really cares about bouncing their cards, which maybe in this meta it would be interesting against, but in set 3, who knows? So.
Yeah, like all the Merlins would be very good against this card.
Yeah. The rabbit, yeah.
There's also some counterplay to this because it says when this character is banished, so you could instead put it into Inkwell with cards like Hades, or you could just bounce it to their hand instead. So then this effect doesn't always apply. It's not just when this leaves the battlefield.
Yeah.
Um,
I think the TLDR for me is I think this card is really powerful. I do. It doesn't mean it's going to be a pop meta contender, but I think it's a very, very powerful card.
For me, it's not the first card. I think in general this set there have been a lot of cards that are a lot harder to evaluate than last set. Like that are very interesting in how they play out.
I think there's a lot more blatantly powerful cards too. Like I know you said that they were more contextual, but there are more cards where I'm just like, this is wild.
Yeah, at least now it's okay. Under this context, that is a reasonable context. This card can be very powerful and has potential. While I feel like last set there was a lot of cards that I think rightfully trashed as like there's no circumstance that will ever happen where this card will be good. So it's just bad.
You know what's funny is I can actually see myself playing this card, this Milo Thatch in like blue green, Sapphire Emerald in a ramp deck. Because I feel like if our inkwell is asymmetric, like it just increases the advantage I'm getting with this card incredibly. I'm also getting this card out faster than turn 7. And I can sing with this card. So I'm singing like I potentially can sing some nasty stuff with this card as well.
Let go, stuff like that.
One play line already, like that's already possible, would be you just go Milo Thatch on 1. And then on 2 you ramp with the 2-cost ramp card.
One jump ahead.
One jump ahead. Yeah. And then on 3 you're already playing this card.
Yeah, that is.
And then it can already like reset the board and you're maybe one ink ahead of your opponent already.
Yeah. Seems interesting for sure. Speaking of Milo Thatch, the next card is another Milo Thatch. It's a Ruby card, 2-cost, inkable 2/2. That quest for 1. While this character is at a location, he gets +2 attack. So honestly, like, okay, a 2-cost inkable 2/2 compared to a 1-cost inkable 2/2 is a lot worse. But as a shift target, if that's really what you care about, and locations are just going to be in your deck as well, if you're playing some type of Emerald Ruby deck. And this card just seems like it's maybe okay. Like I think it's relevant that this card, when he's at location, gets +2 attack, because then he can trade into anything that has the 4 health or has the 3 health, that it could be okay. But I think still comparable to the 1-drop. The 1-drop is a lot better, but if you really want to shift targets, it could be playable.
Situational Gaston without Reckless, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so like, but I think for this to be a good card, you would need like a location where you can move this or play this at for free.
Oh yeah,
and then it's
just
like
wait, Moyen. There's a few of those. There's a few free.
But because like I think if this is often a 4/2 and sometimes a 2/2, it's still a pretty bad card. I think this needs to be like always a 4/2, because even 4/2 is not that crazy of a stat line because it's only 2 HP.
Yep, Lorcana is all about big butts.
Yep. All right, next card is Helga Sinclair with Insteel, 3-cost inkable 2/4, quest for 1, challenger +2. This is basically just the 3-cost 4/4. But not that, like, kind of just as challenger +2.
Yeah.
Seems. I mean, listen. In my opinion, what I'll say for this card is we've seen that Captain Hook can be playable just as a potential 1-cost 3/2 without any of the shift stuff. We've seen that Prince Eric has kind of been playable as well, just as a kind of a 3/3. So yeah, this card could be seen. Yeah, it's just a fine card to print, honestly.
It's okay. So under the right, if this deadline will be good, this card could be good. It's like, because I think it's easiest to compare this to Prince Eric, because it's just 1 extra ink, 1 extra willpower, 1 extra whatever the other thing's called.
Yeah, so the thing is that both of those cards, Prince Eric and Captain Hook, are 3 attacks, and they cost 1 and 2 respectively, and 3 is a breakpoint to trade up. 4 is not really a breakpoint to trade up on.
True.
You would want to look for 5 to significantly trade up on resource with this card. Also, I will say, just as a fundamental, like set 3, Challenger is better than has ever been. Challenger affects locations, like it is a more relevant ability. It's not insanely better, but it's just something to consider, that Challenger is going to be more relevant as locations are played.
Sure. But it's also just like, right now the breakpoints are like 3 and 5, and now with the new removal card maybe 6, but like that can always change, because we haven't seen the entire set yet. So if 4 is a breakpoint, this card's good.
Next card is also Steel card, 2-cost inkable 2/3 Kita, quest for 1 bodyguard, basically Simba for Steel. Only notable thing I'd say is the hero and princess. So if you care about the princess tag, I think Simba's actually also like Prince. So what was that guy's name in set 2? Like the Royal Duke. I think that we talked about this, I think, last set. That was one card that we said, like, in future sets, if all of your cards are just good and they happen to be princesses, prince, kings, queens, that card suddenly is just it's fine, just fine to play, honestly. So, yeah, I think she's good. Again, also another shift target for the card you guys will see soon. But the next card we have here is an Amber card, Bernard, 4-cost inkable 1/5. Quest for 2, a stat line that we're very familiar with, being the Rapunzel card. This card reads, at the end of your turn, if this character is exerted, you may ready another chosen character of yours. I don't know. I mean, just instantly comparing this to Rapunzel, nothing compares to Rapunzel in my opinion for this cost, this stat line and stuff. But again, maybe if you care about a deck that you want to protect your characters, he could see some play. This is a weird card to evaluate, in my opinion.
I'd be willing to take the gamble if this card is not playable. I do see the application, right? You've got this crazy card that quests for a lot and you don't want it to be, maybe even has ward, right? So maybe it's even like the only way that your opponent can usually deal with this card is once it quests, they attack into it. So this is preventing that. But yeah, this card, so the reason why this card is really bad, even in that scenario, is like it only happens once. You quest with this character, like you exert this character, you unready the others, you ready the others, and this character gets killed, and then you've lost that effect. And you're playing this 4-cost 1/5.
Also, yeah, on 4 you're playing this and it has no effect, right? Because the card's not going to be exerted when it comes down. It's only the next turn. So I think just playing a 4-cost 1/5, like think about the comparability. I think playing a 4-cost 1/5, the quest for 2 that actually does something really relevant, like Rapunzel, is actually really good. The stat line is fine. Like 5 health for the 2 quests is pretty good, but this card isn't instantly doing this. If this card was kind of like, I don't know, if this card was like LeFou when you played it and you readied, would it be better?
Yeah,
probably. I think it would be. Yeah.
I have a question though. Is the 4-cost slot in Amber just doomed because Rapunzel will just overshadow like everything that's ever printed?
Not necessarily. We've seen Rapunzel see, like, it wasn't a 4/4 in every Amber deck. There was some decks that.
Yeah, but I think what Brendan's saying is like there's no 4-drop you'd rather play.
I think they could totally exist. It's just
okay.
If you care a lot more about like it proactively being stronger than Rapunzel, because Rapunzel isn't like it's not really a 4-drop. It's like it's a 4-cost card that can be very good at later stages of the game. It's not just like this card that you want to always be playing on 4. I think there could be better on-curve 4-drop. But regarding Bernard, I think there's another problem with the card is for you to be getting value out of the effect, you need to play it. You need to already have something on the board that survives until next turn, and Bernard needs to survive until next turn. Your opponent has the effect's not that crazy even if it goes off, but for your opponent to prevent the effect from going off, all that they need to do is either kill Bernard, or let's say you have only one character on the board, they just kill that character, and suddenly you have this Bernard, and the effect can only be used on another chosen character that's.
You need like a rush card, right? Once it's exerted, right? You need a rush card that would then come. You need another card that somehow comes down, gets tapped on the same turn that Bernard's effect is going to happen.
Ready to back up again, like a Mario.
Too many things. Yeah.
I think it's too slow and not impressive enough.
All right, next card is a Ruby card. It's an action. Voyage, 1-cost inkable. Move up to 2 characters of yours to the same location for free.
For free.
Yeah.
I just love the way they phrase that. Like it's, I feel like that happens in real life where you pay like $70 to go to like a movie or something. It's like, oh, but you get free popcorn. It's like, wait, I paid $70 to get in here. It's like, because you have to pay an ink and this card. It's not, I mean, obviously that's templating on the card, but it's funny. I feel like it's hard for me to distill this thought down, but in my opinion, at least so far, is that cards that have bonus effects from moving have that bonus effect baked into their cost. So like, because they have an effect that makes them more powerful for moving, they might have a lower stat line, they might be more expensive, they might be uninkable. So I'd rather be trying to do that for free in like other ways. You know, I don't want to cast an entire other card on top of that and lose an ink. Yeah.
It says for free, but in reality it says pay a card and pay 1 ink and then do it.
Yeah, the difference if this was on an actual body where you said, right, Brendan, where like this effect was taken into consideration with the cost, but the fact that this is just like a 1-cost separate kind of thing. This is like the boat. It's like when you buy the laptop and you get the USB key for free. This is just like the USB key. This card is just a good lesson for life, and that things that people that are said to be free sometimes aren't free. Are not free.
Usually they're not.
Usually they're not.
I think next very bad.
Yeah, next card's kind of interesting. I definitely like it. It's an emerald card. Cursed Merfolk, 1 cost, uninkable, 0/1. Whenever this character is challenged, each opponent chooses and discards a card, but quests for 2. So, I mean, in a meta where a card, let's say like Robin Hood exists, where this just taps and then it dies, this card's not that
It's
good.
just another
right?
Flynn Rider, right? Like it's a cheaper Flynn Rider.
Cheaper Flynn Rider, good against, again, like you said, Brennan, if you're giving cards reckless just to kill this, right? But like, is that, I mean, do you want to give a card reckless to kill this? Like, I don't know, you know?
So Flynn Rider, like this card is always going to be a 1/1. Because this doesn't attack back, it'll never kill the thing that's attacking it. It's just a tempo loss for your opponent. I think because of that, it's maybe a little bit worse than Flynn Rider. I know Flynn Rider being a 1/2 is not really killing anything, but it can. Like, it's irrelevant for it to have 1 attack. I think things having 0 attack is like infinitely worse than 1. So it's an onboard 1/1. I think it's possible. Like, even though the value exchange rate on this card is not fantastic, I think it's very possible to be played because the kind of decks this is played in are aggro decks where a 1 cost that quests for 2 is obnoxious at first. Just first of all, that's obnoxious. And then those cards are just trying to kind of tempo your opponent out in the early game, so making the discard card is relevant, where they can cast maybe more discard spells. Like, there's a critical maximum of discard effects you can have in the early game to where your opponent just has 0 cards in hand. They're not able to ink. They're like choosing between inking and playing every turn, and they're on like two ink in their inkwell. I think it's a good card.
This in conjunction with Flynn Rider can make it so you have a very aggressive game plan where your opponent isn't allowed to play their normal game plan, because not only do they need to be trading into these or killing these so they don't immediately lose, but also doing so, they lose the so much hand size that they can't ink how they would usually ink, play the cards that they would usually play. Maybe they have to play with a lower ink count than the deck is intended to do. So I think this card is very, very good for that. And just comparing this to the 1 cost uninkable 1/1s that quest for 2, those often get traded down in a way where them having the 1 attack doesn't matter as much, right? Of course it matters, but they often get traded down at some point where it didn't really matter that they dealt one damage back. And this can do the same thing, but make them lose a card instead of take 1 damage on the characters. I think this card
it's actually it's nuts.
It's really good.
I totally forgot about something I was talking about. Is it like other cards that are 1 cost uninkables that quest for 2, and they exist? Maleficent, Lilo.
Yeah,
they actually don't. So I said
they don't care about the 1 attack at all.
Well, it's not even that. It's like those. I said that this card 1/1 trades your opponent, therefore the value is not that good. But in the context, like the cards that have the stat line don't even 1/1 trade, and they're still good. Like Lilo doesn't trade. Yeah, they give lore. So the fact that this gives that amount of lore that Lilo and like Maleficent do, and it guaranteed almost guaranteed. Let's be real. It's not guaranteed, but nearly guaranteed 1/1 your opponent as well. This card is very powerful.
Yeah. Also, maybe let's say you play this on 1. Flynn. Okay. Against a deck that can't just like kill this without challenging these cards. But against a deck that cannot do that, you just play this on 1, let's say Flynn Rider on 2, and then you play Prince John and quest with both of them. And then suddenly they're not 1/1.
Yeah. And this card's really good. Really good.
I agree. Next card is a Sapphire item, 4 cost, inkable, Vault Door. Your locations and characters at locations gain resist +1. I mean, I would say this is most comparable to the, 4 dozen eggs? That's it. Well, actually, that's not even comparable, right? The 4 dozen eggs is a song that gives all of your characters resist +2.
It's kind of like mouse armor.
Maybe mouse armor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was looking back at one of our videos.
Honestly, mouse armor was probably the card I was too high on.
Yeah. I was looking back at one of our videos and like, Brandon's such a dumbass. Like, because I said mouse armor is not good, and everybody's like, oh, Moyen is just so much smarter than Brandon. Yeah, resist 1 is. It's not irrelevant. Like it's a relevant thing for your characters to have, but I don't think you can pay 4 and a card for it. Also, they only get it when they're at location. Sorry, your locations and characters, not when they're at locations. I don't think you can pay 4 and an entire card for resist 1. It's too slow. It's not a good enough payoff. Never has been. I'd be surprised if it is in the future.
Sure.
Yeah, it can give a lot of, like, in theory, it can give a lot of things with this +1 for the entire game. But I see the cost of the card and for ink also being very, very high. So we need to be playing this in a deck where we play almost exclusively locations and cards that are immediately at locations, or remove them there very quickly for this to be okay. So it's a little mediocre, I think.
I'll call it unplayable and come back to me with it.
You'll give it the Mouse Armor treatment, and we'll come back and see next set. Okay, we're going to do 2 more cards, guys, and then we're going to leave it at that, and then we'll come back and do the rest next week.
We got a German card as well.
Yeah, you're going to have to test Moyen's German. That's
I think he might be pretty good.
Yeah, okay. The second last card we're going to cover is a Steel item card. 3-cost inkable Map of Treasure Planet. Tap, you pay 1 less for the next location you play this turn. And also you pay 1 less to move your characters to a location. I think this card would be okay. I mean, comparing it to the last item, I think it's a lot better. But again, like, we haven't really dived into the locations, so we don't care about how much. We haven't seen how much locations really matter right now. But I think it could see play, honestly.
So comparing, let's compare this to Lantern, right? Because this item costs more than Lantern, and Lantern basically cheats in a resource every turn. So I would want this to cheat more than 1 resource on average per turn.
Well, this could well, I think that's fair that it would do, because you're paying 1 less for the location and you're paying 1 less to move, and I mean, it's never going to be free to move a card to a location. And when you play a location, as soon as you play a location, you can move a card there. So it just requires you to either have a character on board, or the items on board, you play a location, you play a character from your hand, and then you can move it for 1 less. So
it's hard to evaluate without knowing the locations.
Sure.
I don't love it. I really don't love it. It's just it's a bit narrow in my opinion. I don't know what the critical minimum of location is going to be in some of these decks, but I would think it would be less than characters. I think we'd have less locations than characters. That's my idea. Could be different.
Probably, yeah.
Could be different. So I think this card is just more narrow. Lantern is uninkable. This card is inkable, but still, I'm not a huge fan. I think I could be totally wrong on this. Like, context based. When context comes into play and we know the locations and we know the effects from moving to said locations, then maybe. But right now, I don't see it.
I also don't see it really, because even if, in theory, maybe you can cheat a lot more than 1 resource per turn with this, because you can play a location for 1 less and then also maybe move some characters for 1 less. I guess I don't expect us to be doing this stuff like all the time, and I think you would need to be doing this stuff a lot of the time for this card to cheat enough resources for it to pay back the cost of playing it. That being said, I think if, like, a lot of locations are cost 1 to move something here, and then suddenly you can move your cards for 0, that's like the big cost reduction, right? Suddenly you can move them there for free.
Let me have a peek. I won't tell you guys the answer to that question, but let's see. So far there are, I think there's like 6 locations that can move, but that being said, I think there's only 6 locations that cost 1 for you to move, maybe even 7, but from what I can see, only 2 of them have actual decent effects, if that makes sense. The rest of them are just pretty much vanilla
so that
locations.
Doesn't really matter to move them there.
Well, there's one I can tell you. We'll try to give some context to this card, right? Because we've seen this location already. So one is Maui's Place of Exile, which is a 2-cost inkable location that has 5 health, and it costs 1 to move the card here, and it says characters gain resist +1 while here.
Yeah, so moving them there for free is kind of like giving
them resist. Yeah.
But also, it's not like your locations never die. Yeah, I think without knowing all of the locations, I still don't expect this card to be good.
Yeah,
I think it's a fair evaluation, but also like it's a very hard. It's just very hard card to evaluate. Even I feel like even with knowing all of the locations, like, it obviously helps, but it's still difficult. It's still really difficult. All right, Moyen, Finish it off
Okay.
here.
Give us.
You
give
take
us-
this one away.
Read it in German first, then translate it. I want to get the
Okay.
true experience.
Yeah, tell us it's like a 4-cost inkable emerald card, all in German. Go, tell us.
No. It's okay.
No, that I can say in English. Okay. 4-cost inkable. It's a 0/6 that quests for 1 in emerald. It's called Shenzi Hyänen Rüdelführerin. And the effect says, ich mach das schon. Solange dieser Charakter an einem Ort ist, erhält er +3 Willensstärke. So eilig, solange dieser Charakter an einem Ort ist, darfst du jedes Mal, wenn er einen anderen Charakter herausfordert, eine Karte ziehen.
Brandon, what do you think it does? Tell
Well,
us.
it gets +3 attack if you have a character named Ort.
No, that's a location.
Okay.
So if there's a character at a location, it has +3 willpower. And then?
If there's a character at a location, or
While this
While
character
this
is
character.
at a location. While
Okay.
this character is at a location.
Yeah. So it's a 3/6 by being at a location.
And then if it's at a location, it gets a what? I don't know.
And then also if it's at a location, every time it challenges another character, you may draw a card.
Okay.
So it's a 0/6, but at a location it's a 3/6.
yeah,
And it's a 3/6 that if it's at a location, when it challenges a character, it draws a card.
that's pretty
So
good.
I mean,
It really wants to be at a location.
you really want a strong if this is at a location consistently, this card is very good. Like very, very, very good.
Yeah, even 4/3/6 is
Yeah, it's a
really
good.
high stat line.
4-3-6 is insane stat line. Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah.
That's good. How do you say good in
Eh.
German?
Gut.
Good.
Oh man, that was such a great way to end the podcast. Oh man.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So yeah, that's all the spoilers we're going to be covering on this episode. Stay tuned for next week though, because like we're gonna have there's a lot left still that we're gonna have to cram into the last week, which is gonna be really exciting. But for the most part, what do you guys think about? I mean, I'm the person I think that's seen the most spoilers, but at the same time, when I see these spoiler cards, I say, oh, that looks interesting, but I don't really get a great chance to dive into, the concepts and stuff. So this is a really good rate learning experience for me as well. But I mean, we don't want to keep trashing and coming back to what you said, Brendan. But like, do you think this is bulk? Or do
Definitely
you
not
think,
bulk.
Yeah.
Definitely not bulk.
Yeah.
I think this is a really strong set from the cards that we've seen so far. Just lots of cards that are interesting and so also a lot harder to evaluate, but
Mhm.
that
Which is a
provide
good thing, I
potential
think,
under
honestly.
different circumstances. Yeah, and I think that this will just give a lot of tools to react to certain meta games and to build decks differently than we used to. So I'm very happy with the cards that we've seen so far.
Yeah, I feel like outside of the item deck, set 2 was really straightforward. I mean, the item deck was found pretty quick, but the item deck was a new archetype. Outside of that, we just got support for a lot of existing archetypes. I know there was discard, but those were really obvious decks. Like they were signposted and things like that. This, I see more individually powerful cards where I'm like, okay, there's a whole new kind of control deck I can build. Like, there's just a lot more tools to deal with, and I think that's on purpose. These games will tend to come out with like the first couple sets. They want them to be more simple. A lot of people get more familiar with the cards, and then as we age, we expand to these more complex mechanics, which is where I feel like we're at right now. Like these cards are I'm really happy with it so far.
That actually reminds me though, Brendan, before we end, I do have to say, when you're talking about what things did we get slightly wrong from set 2, I do recall that you said that the whole bounce archetype was going to be a bit of a meme, that it wasn't going to be as strong, but
I think I said bounce
you-
the archetype, not bounce the bounce. Like I just play good cards in my deck that happen to get bonuses from being bounced.
No, yeah, I think you were more so, and I think it was fair. I think you were more so referring to like the entire bounce package, like running every single, like we don't run the Merlin, the 2/4 that when you bounce something he gets +1. The Squirrel, like I think there was context given to some of the cards. Like everyone wasn't running Crab, and then suddenly Crab saw a bit of play, right? Because it's a solid card, but I think what you said was fair. Like it wasn't like full on bounce, but the flexibility of bounce, I think we did overlook a little bit, in my opinion, right?
It's
I think
hard to evaluate archetypes in spoiler season because you take everything card by card.
Yes.
We definitely missed items. Like, like I didn't see Flaversham and go like, maybe Flaversham because it draws two
we
cards.
still said it can be a good card.
It draws two cards,
and then
but
with Popsicle, for sure.
Yeah. Those ones are definitely harder to do. I wasn't immediately thinking like, oh, the Tamatoa deck's going to be really good now.
Yeah.
But yeah, set 3 looks really cool. Kawa, do you want to take us out? I'm a little bit sick, so my throat is like, oh, it's right.
Of course. All right, thank you so much, everyone, for listening to this week's pod. If you guys want to support, I'm so bad at this. If you guys want to support us on other
the number one thing you can do to support the podcast is leave us a review on Apple Podcast and the other podcast platforms.
Yeah, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that good stuff. Really appreciate it. It actually helps us a ton. Honestly, we were just talking about our back end numbers earlier, and we're killing it on platforms. So thank you so much for all of the support, both there and on YouTube. If you guys want to watch a video version of this, be available at youtube.com/@Podcana podcast. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, engage with us, do all that algorithm stuff. And yeah, stick around for next week, because I think next week is going to be super, super fun. Thanks so much for listening, and we will catch you in the next one.
See y'all.